Let the sun shine.
Yes.
You can lead us in that. Let
The sun shining, the sun shining. Let the sun shine.
So you can tell already that this is going to be a little bit more lighthearted of a service than last week. But we really, needed to do what we did last week, and just in honoring what happened at the Boston Marathon and all those who are still recovering. Thank you for what you shared, David, about the police officer who's on the mend. Thank you, God. And like I said, this is going to be a little bit lighter fare. Even my talk today is simple but not easy. A simple subject but not easy. Next week, I promised my Bible students, I don't know if I should tell you this ahead of time, you may all stay home, but I'm going to dive into something really complex and give a talk on Revelation to John, the book of Revelation in the New Testament. If anybody is familiar with that, that's not easy. It's not an easy book to read, it's not an easy book to understand, but this book, which I'm going to talk to you about this morning, The Why Cafe, is a really good and easy read. You can do it in a couple hours. I feel like Ellen DeGeneres or Oprah Winfrey.
Yes.
Because you're all going to get a copy of this. Before you leave today. The way this started is, you know how much I love Facebook, right? So I'm on a Unity Ministers Facebook group. And there's postings all the time about all sorts of things. So one day, one of the ministers posted about this book, that this was written by John Struckley from Orlando, Florida, and this man had read the book and was so moved by it. It made such an impact on his life that he committed to printing 50,000 copies of it as long as it was guaranteed that it would be distributed to free to Unity congregations. Wow. So I, jumped right on that and put in my order for the book. And so it came, I read it like that, and I said, wow, this is really great. And I was going to talk to you about it last week. But I think this is even more divine timing to talk to you about it on Volunteer Appreciation Sunday. It just is so related to all of you who have stepped up to share your gifts and your talents and to provide sacred service to this community. And you'll know what I mean more by that in a minute once I get into what is the Y Cafe all about. Well, let me ask you, have you ever wondered if there wasn't supposed to be more to your life than working 10 to 12 hours a day?
Yes.
With the main point of trying to get that promotion so you can work 12 to 14 hours a day for your life. Have you ever felt like you were trading your life, maybe just for money, and it's not such a good trade anymore? Have you ever felt like you may have just lost your way? Maybe you're not working 10 to 12 hours, but maybe you look at your life and say, this is not what I thought it was going to be. This is not the way I thought I was going to spend my life. Let me ask you, are some of you ready to head in a new direction?
Yes.
If you said yes to any of those questions, this book is for you. Oh, you so know your purpose. Does Carmen know her purpose?
Yes.
Amen. Now, this book is about 4 characters. It's about John, the author, a frustrated businessman who is going on vacation to try and recharge. You know that expression? Needs to get re-energized, recharged. It's kind of odd, you burn out, you recharge, you burn out, you recharge, you burn out, you recharge. But do we ever stop and question, why is that happening? Why are we living lives of quiet desperation, maybe not so quiet sometimes, where we get so burned out that we have to recharge again? So anyway, in this story, there's 4 characters. There's John, and then there's 3 characters that he meets in a cafe. There's Casey, who's the waitress. There's Mike, who is the owner of the cafe and also the cook. He cooks everything. And another customer, Anne. I'm not going to talk too much about Anne. But when you get the book, you'll find all the pearls of wisdom that she shares as well. I can only skim the surface of this, unless you want me to talk to you for 2 hours.
No, because we're going to read.
So the story begins with John. And like I said, he's going on vacation. Have you ever had this situation where bad goes from worse, and from bad goes to worse, where you finally make it to your vacation, and then everything starts to fall apart, sort of implode?
Yes.
Well, he's on his way to his vacation, and he finds himself in this terrible traffic jam. Turns out that some toxic vehicle up ahead that was carrying toxic materials overturned, and police officers were coming back and saying, nothing's going to be moving for hours. You're stuck here. And he gives this whole incredible discourse of all the conversations that's going on with the people in the vehicles. You have to read that. But he was in a mess, let's just say. So he decided to change direction. They were given that option, that they could go over the medium and turn around. But of course, soon after he made that decision, he became hopelessly lost.
Yes.
You know, remember the new beginning and then the void? So he had no idea where he was. He was driving for hours and hours, getting lower and lower on gasoline, feeling hungrier and hungrier, and wondering what he has done. So even though he's taken this vacation to get away from all the frustration and stresses of his life, you know, the job, the bills, everyday life, what's happening to him? He's getting more and more stressed, more and more frustrated, more and more in need of recharging. So anyways, hopelessly lost and frustrated, until he sees this single white street light. Get it? He sees the light. Shining bright. In a location, he writes, so remote that it was in the middle of nowhere. It is here where he finds the Why Are You Here Cafe. That's the full name.
Okay.
The Why Are You Here Cafe. Then they shorten it and they call it the Y Cafe. Why Are You Here Cafe? And he gratefully enters the place, hungry, ready to eat, finds a table, and the waitress comes over. And she introduces herself. Hi, I'm Casey. She has her name tag. He sees that. And the conversation begins. And John says to her, hi, Casey. I'm John, and I'm a little lost. And Casey replies, yes, you are, John. And of course, John's like, is she saying, yes, you are John, or yes, you are lost? Weird. He kind of compares it like going into the Twilight Zone.
It is.
So he wasn't sure what she meant, but he takes the menu from her and starts to look at the menu. And inside the menu, it's the usual cafe fare, you know, all the different selections. But on the front cover, where it says, the Why Are You Here Cafe, underneath in small letters, it says, prior to ordering, please consult with our waitstaff about what your time here could mean. This guy's frustrated, he's tired, he's hungry. It's like 10:30 at night, by the way, okay? By the time he finds this place. And then on the back cover of the menu, there are 3 questions under the heading. And it says, it starts with items to ponder while you wait. And the 3 questions are, why are you here? Do you fear death? And are you fulfilled? Pretty good questions, huh? 3 questions we're going to ponder together for a few minutes this morning. Because, you know, it always can help to look at this stuff from a new and fresh perspective. If you're coming to church, I'm sure you've already pondered questions like this. Why are you here? What's the meaning of it all? In this book, The Why Cafe, it does give us a fresh perspective. So let's start with the first question. Why are you here? Now, Casey has this whole discussion with John about it, because, of course, he asked her about it. And she brings up the fact that it's one thing to simply look at the question as it is written, but it's another to change it. If you change the question to no longer be something you ask somebody else, think about that. Don't we sometimes go to churches and read books and attend workshops because we're looking for someone to give us the answer? Why are you here? She goes, if you change that viewpoint, that perspective, and instead you change it to something you ask yourself, such as, why am I here? Why am I here? What will happen is that you'll no longer be the same person. Now, it's not a question to be taken lightly. You know, you can just glance at it, that's one thing, just glance at, oh yeah, But when you go beyond glancing and really, really look at it, really see it, and then truly ask of yourself, why am I here? Your world changes. You see, once you truly ask the question, why am I here, seeking the answer is going to be part of the reason for your being. Did you hear that? You know how we call ourselves in Unity truth seekers? Once you are a seeker, you can't turn back. Once you go through that door, once you enter that gate, it's like asking, why do I exist at all? Now, you might be thinking, I'm not sure anyone would ask themselves that question, BJ. I've never asked it. I'm just fine. Are you fine? Are you really fine? Many people are fine, but some people seek something more fulfilling than fine. Right? Something greater. Perhaps that's even why you are here this morning in a Unity Church service. Because fine is not good enough. Have you ever wondered if there's more to life than what you already know? Like John, you might have a decent job, you might have a good family, good friends. Life may be fine, even good, but still somewhere in the back of your mind lingers that unrest, that feeling that something's missing. Anybody relate to that? It's that feeling that inspires people, by the way, to ask the question, why am I here? Is this it? Is this it? And once the question is asked, like I said, it's going to be at the forefront of your existence from that point on. But it doesn't even stop there, folks, because once you find the answer, and you know, I can't cover everything this morning. Got to read the book to find all the possible ways to find an answer to that question. Once you find the answer, an equally powerful force emerges. You see, once a person knows the reason that they're here, why they exist, the reason they're alive, what do you think happens? They want to fulfill that reason. Are you fulfilled? We'll get to that in a minute. So back to the story of the Y Cafe. John asks Mike, the owner of the cafe, the guy who does all the cooking, and Casey, the waitress, they're both at the table at this point. What happens when you find the answer? What then? And Mike replies, once a person figures out the reason, once they have the knowledge, they can do whatever they want with it. It belongs to them. They have ultimate and total say about what to do. Do you like that? You're free. No longer trying to please anybody else. Do what you think is expected of you. You get to do anything you want. Breathe. Like, oh no, BJ, life's not like that. Life is the rat race. Where are you living? Once someone knows why they're here, they can do whatever they want that fulfills the reason. Is this good news? Can it really be that simple?
Yes.
Think about it. Yes, it can. Let me read you an example from the book, from an exchange between John and Casey. say the reason I'm here is to help people, then I should do whatever I want that fits my definition of helping people? This is John. I asked excitedly, warming to the concept. That's correct, said Casey. If helping people to you means joining the medical profession, you can do that. If it means building shelters in an impoverished area, then do that. Perhaps you feel becoming an accountant and assisting people with their taxes is the way you want to help. Then you should do that. My mind was spinning. I had never really thought of things in this context before. Much of my life had been spent making decisions in response to other reasons, like family advice, cultural pressures, and people's opinions. This was something different. So what if I'm here to experience what it's like to be a millionaire? Then you should do whatever fits your definition of being a millionaire, she replied. If that means interacting with millionaires, do that. If it means working until you have $1 million, do that. Just like in the other examples, the choice is always yours. Be a millionaire. I kind of like the sound of that, I said, getting more and more excited. I could buy a few new cars, maybe a couple of houses. Casey's voice became quiet. Is that why you're here? Her question caused my mind to stop racing. I don't know. Mike and I have a little acronym we use, she said. It relates to the question you saw briefly on the menu. I looked down and read the first question, why are you here? When a person knows the reason they are here, they have identified their purpose for existing. We call it PFE for short. That's going to become language around here. I'm going to go around, what's your PFE? You living up to your PFA? Are you fulfilling it? Okay. During someone's lifetime, they may find that they want to do 10, 20, or 100 things to fulfill their purpose for existing. They can do all of them. Our most fulfilled customers are the ones who know their PFE and try all the activities they believe will fulfill it. And your least fulfilled customers, I asked? They do lots of things too, she said. She paused, and I spoke the thought that leapt into my mind. They do lots of things that aren't part of their PFE. Casey smiled. And I realized this was one of those conclusions I needed to arrive on my own. We're doing a lot of things, right? We fill our day doing things, making your to-do list, so that's me. But how many of the things that you're doing are fulfilling your PFE? Do you even know what your PFE is? When I think about the way I spend my time, it's pretty much the same day in and day out. And why is that? Maybe it's because I don't know the answer to the question. I do know my PFE, I'll share it with you later, but maybe that's why I do the same thing day in and day out if you're doing that, without exactly knowing exactly why I'm here and what I want to do. You know, you can easily fall into a routine of just doing things like everybody else, just going through the motions. But let's take a moment now and look at the second question. Do you fear death? Because it's related to the first question. Why are you here? Most people do fear death. It's one of the most common fears that we share. You see, people who haven't asked themselves the first question and haven't taken steps to fulfill their PFE, their purpose for existing, with what they want to do, those people fear death. Consciously or unconsciously, we all know that as each day passes, we're another day closer to not having a chance to do what we came here to do, right? So many of us fear the day that exists sometime in the future when we'll no longer have the chance to do it. We fear the day we will die. But the good news, folks, is that it doesn't have to be this way, does it? It doesn't have to be some day in the future when you finally get to do what you want to do. In our culture, when do we think that usually is? Retirement. I'm going to work my bones, myself to whatever it is. I can't remember the expression. until I can retire and finally do what I want to do.
Crazy.
That is crazy.
If I ask myself, why am I here, find the answer, then choose things I want to do that will fulfill my purpose for existing, and then actually do them, why would I fear death? Have you ever heard people say, I've done everything I wanted to do. My life is complete, it's fulfilled. Another example from the book. This was shared by Mike to John. It's the fisherman's story. Let's see if I can find it. I want to be sure I got this right. Okay. Mike came over to the table. How's the food, John? Terrific. This is some place you should think of franchising. You could make a fortune. Mike smiled. Maybe I already have a fortune. Then why would you be working here? I stopped myself already too late. Sorry, Mike. I didn't mean that. This isn't a great place. I just meant, I'm not sure what I meant, actually. That's okay, said Mike. I've gotten that question more than once. John, did you ever hear the story of the businessman who went on vacation and met a fisherman? I don't think so. It's a popular little story. A couple of years ago, said Mike. Interested? It relates to your comment on franchising. Sure, I replied. Well, the story goes that a businessman went on vacation to get away from it all, to recharge his batteries, so to speak. He flew to his faraway location and wandered into a small village. And over the course of a few days, he watched the people in the community and noticed there was one fisherman in particular who seemed the happiest and the most content of everyone. The businessman was curious about this, so one day he approached the fisherman and asked him what he did every day. And the man replied that he woke up every morning and had breakfast with his wife and children. Then his kids would go off to school and he would go fishing, and his wife would paint. And he would fish for a few hours, return with enough fish for the family meals, and then he would take a nap. And after dinner, he and his wife would take a walk along the beach and watch the sunset while the kids swam in the ocean. And the businessman was stunned. You do this every day, he asked. Most days, replied the fisherman. Sometimes we do other things, but for the most part, yes. This is my life. And every day you catch fish, asked the businessman. Yes, replied the fisherman. There are many fish. Can you catch more than just the fish you bring home for your family? Inquired the businessman. The fisherman looked at him, smiled, and replied, oh yes. I often catch many more and just let them go. You see, I love fishing. Well, why don't you fish all day and catch as many as you can, asked the businessman. Then you could sell the fish and make lots of money. Pretty soon you could buy a second boat and then a third boat, and their fishermen could catch lots of fish too. In a few years, you could have an office in a major city, and I bet within 10 years you could have an international fish distribution business. The fisherman smiled again at the businessman. Why would I do all that? Well, for the money, replied the businessman. You would do it so you could get lots of money and then retire. And what would I do when I retired? Asked the fisherman, still smiling. Well, whatever you want, I suppose, said the businessman. For instance, maybe I could eat breakfast with my family? Yes, I guess so, said the businessman, a little annoyed that the fisherman wasn't getting more excited about his idea. And if I wanted to, since I love fishing so much, I could fish a little bit each day? The fisherman continued, I don't see why not, said the businessman. There probably won't be as many fish by then, but there should still be some. Then perhaps I could spend my evenings with my wife, walking along the beach and watching the sunset, while our children swam in the ocean, inquired the fisherman. Sure, whatever you want, although by then your kids will probably be grown, said the businessman. The fisherman smiled at the other man, shook his head, and wished him well on his efforts to recharge. Mike finished the story and looked at me. What do you think, John? I think I'm a little bit like the businessman. I spend most of my days working so that I'll have enough money to retire. I used to do that too, said Mike. But I came to a very important realization for me. Retirement was this time in the future when I would have enough money to do what I wanted. I would be free to participate in the activities I liked and could spend every day in a way that fulfilled me. Then one evening, after a particularly unfulfilling day at work, I came to the conclusion that there had to be a better way. Over time, I learned that somehow I've gotten confused about how things should work. It was so simple, it seemed crazy that I'd gotten it confused, but nonetheless I had. Anybody confused? Anybody living a life of confusion? Now the third and final question. Oh dear. Are you fulfilled? Are you fulfilled? Until I go beyond merely knowing why I'm here and actually start working towards it, I cannot be fulfilled. Can't happen. Yes, it's exciting to discover your PFE. That's exciting to know about it. Some people don't even know they have a PFE. It's exciting to discover it. But even more exciting than that is to do the things that help me fulfill the reason that I'm here. Have you ever met somebody who is completely and passionate about the way that they live, about what they're doing? Have you met people? We have people like that in this church. A couple in the back. I see a Reef and Amina were here, or maybe they left. No, they're here still. I think of you the whole time I read the book.
Yes.
Carmen over here. Think about it a minute. Can you picture that person in your mind? If you don't already take the ones I gave you. They truly seem to be spending time on something they enjoy, right? Let me ask you, are they good at what they do?
Yes.
You know, with all the enthusiasm and energy they bring to it, you bet. Let me ask you another question. Do they ever get tired of doing what they do? They can't seem to know. You know, they don't seem like they can get enough of it. It's like they get charged up by doing it. Ooh,
yes.
That's an opposite concept. They're very upbeat and positive people who probably do not need to get away from it all to be recharged. Just think what would life be like if you were always doing the things you wanted to do. What if you were always spending your time on something that you were passionate about? Wouldn't life be happier? Would it be more joyful? Would it have more meaning? So by now you might be wondering, if life could be so good, why doesn't everyone go after their PFE? What exactly is holding them back?
Yeah.
Let me read to you what Mike gave to John concerning this question. What keeps us back? Well, for many people, it's as simple as never being exposed to the concept of a purpose for existing. Others understand the concept, but they aren't sure they have a PFE. Then there's some people who, because of their upbringing, environment, or perhaps religious beliefs, don't believe they have the right to try and fulfill their PFE. Even people who feel they have a purpose for existing and believe they have the right to fulfill it, sometimes don't believe fulfilling it is as simple as knowing they can and then doing what they want. This goes back to some of what you and Ann were talking about. Many people make their living or get their power by convincing others that they or something they make or sell are the key to fulfillment. Imagine the challenge for them if people came to the realization that we each control our own level of fulfillment. The people trying to convince others would lose their power. For those types of people, losing power over others is not something that sounds appealing. That reminds me of one of the conversations Casey and I had earlier tonight, John said. She helped me understand that once someone knows their PFE, they get to do and become whatever they want. They don't need someone else's permission or consent. Correct, Mike said. And on top of that, no one can keep a person from or enable them to achieve and do all they want in life. We each control our own destiny. Do you believe that?
Yes.
So you and I control our destiny. You and I can each answer those three questions. Why am I here? Do I fear death? Am I fulfilled? No, I've just skimmed the surface of this book with you this morning. If you really want to control your destiny and to know and live your purpose for existence, I strongly recommend that you read this cover to cover. You say, thank you, God, this dropped in my lap this morning. But to end this morning, I'd like to share one more conversation that's so powerful between Mike and John. I'm almost done. The kids, God bless them. Mike, do you mind? So John's asking Mike this. Mike, do you mind if I ask you a personal question? Not at all. What is it? I looked at him. What made you ask the question on the menu? You know, the first question. Mike sat back and a smile crept onto his face. What makes you so sure I have? Your demeanor, this place. I don't know for sure, but I get the feeling you're doing exactly what you want to be doing. I assumed you asked the question at some point, and this place is the result. Mike smiled again and took a sip from his mug. A number of years ago, I was living a pretty hectic life. I was going to graduate school at night, working full-time during the day, and filling every other minute training for and trying to make it as a professional athlete. For 2.5 years, almost every moment of my life was scheduled. When I graduated, I quit my job and took the summer off, since I'd already lined up a new job that would start at the beginning of September. A buddy of mine and I decided to go down to Costa Rica to celebrate our respective graduations. He had just completed school also. We spent weeks traveling around the country, hiking through rainforests, seeing wildlife, and getting immersed in a new culture. Then one day we were sitting on a log eating fresh mangoes and watching the waves crash against this unbelievably beautiful beach. We'd spent the afternoon body surfing in the 85-degree weather and were relaxing and watching the sky turn from brilliant blue to pink, orange, and red as the sun began to set. That sounds pretty spectacular, I said. It was. And I remember looking up at the entire scene and coming to the realization that while I had been planning every minute of my life for the last 2.5 years, this scene had been repeating itself every day. Paradise had been just a few hours plane flight and some dirt roads away, and I didn't even know it existed. And I realized not only had it existed for the 2.5 years I was so busy, but the sun had been setting there and the waves had been crashing upon that beach for millions, if not billions of years. As that realization came over me, I felt very small. My problems, the things I had stressed about, my worries about the future, all seemed completely unimportant. I knew no matter what I did or didn't do during my life, whether my decisions were right or wrong or somewhere in the middle, all of this world would still be going on long after I was no longer alive. I sat there and faced with the unbelievable beauty and grandeur of nature and the realization that my life was tiny in comparison to this something that was so big. And I was struck by the thought, so why am I here? If all the things I thought were so important really aren't, then what is? What is my purpose for existing? Why am I here? And once I had those questions in my head, I went through something similar to what Casey described to you. They were always with me until I figured out the answers. I sat back in my seat. This is John. I hadn't realized it, but as Mike was speaking, I was leaning forward to catch every part of what he was saying. Thanks, Mike. That's an amazing story. Life is an amazing story, John. It's just that some people don't realize they are the author, and they can write it however they want.
Yes.
Amen.
Yes. So how are you going to write your life? Why are you here? What is your purpose for existing? Just a little food for thought from the Why Are You Here Cafe. So let us stand and join together in singing hymn 125.